Good afternoon and welcome to the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization this beautiful day on April 12, 2018. And I'm calling this meeting to order. And next will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so under public comments, if there's anyone that would like to speak under a particular item, just hand your card over to the clerk over here, and we'll get it taken care of. Item number 4 is reports from committee. 4A, Technical Advisory Committee, TAC, Citizens Advisory Committee, CAC report. Mr. Kahn.
You have in front of you a two-sided single sheet that summarizes the attendance and the action items taken. We did not have a quorum for the Citizens Advisory Committee, so there were no actions taken by the CAC. The TAC then did recommend approval of the work order for the bicycle pedestrian master plan, update scope of services. That's going to be a very exciting project that is going to involve all of you and all the cities. In a way, I'm sorry I won't be here to be involved in that, but that'll be a very exciting project. The other will be, the approval is the resolution adopting amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. That's all the action items. I do want to call out to Lisa. I'm not listed as present.
Oh, you?
No, Lisa. Yeah.
Oh.
I thought you were telling me something here. You know, it was my last day. Well, you know, we forgot.
Sorry, Bob. I'll be sure to make that correction for you.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Very good. So do I need a motion for acknowledge of the receipt?
Yes.
All right. So, Board, I need a motion. All right. So I have a motion by Mr. Allender, second by Mr. Holton, to approve the receipt of the draft TAC CAC meeting minutes of March 5th, 2018. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. 4B is the Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee report. That's going to be Ms. Kim Smith.
Good afternoon. I kind of want to share with you a success story coming out of the north part of the county. Some of you that have been with us for a while remember that when the space program kind of was going in the wrong direction, the city of Titusville had to kind of think about what they were going to do to drive the economy in the area. So one of the things that they looked around and they said, you know, we got a pretty cool place here, and you know, we've got this rail trail coming, and we think we're gonna promote to bicyclists and walkers and outdoor enthusiasts. And of course, they've had the birding festival for a long time. Well, within a month of opening the new trail, they hosted Bike Florida. Now, Bike Florida is a week-long touring a ride. This year had 600 cyclists. TPO staff went with them for the whole week, and they spent the last 3 days of the tour in Titusville. And I just want to show you a little bit about what the day in the life of 600 cyclists looks like out of Sandpoint Park in Titusville. just a quick snapshot there, and we're really happy for the city of Titusville and all of Brevard County. As you can see, it's beautiful. I was out with some cyclists one day out there headed out towards the seashore and overheard one of them saying this is simply an oasis. So it's nice to hear those kind of things.
That's right.
Well, I'd also like to add that Bike Florida, these are very active, committed cyclists from all over, not just Florida, but they were really coming on this ride from Ohio and other places.
All over the place, yeah. Usually 40 or so states that are represented.
They are active in local bicycle clubs, and they pass the word to each other. So this is how you get momentum build up and the word-of-mouth advertising by getting these kinds of very dedicated cyclists. Build it and they shall come, and yes, they are. They are. So I felt that that's something we all should be aware of, that it's working.
Yeah, and when Bob mentioned that the other day, I told him that I follow Bike Florida on Facebook, and of course these people came from New York and Ohio, and we know what the weather's like up there. It's not quite as good as it is here in Florida, and they were already back home going, I wish I was back on Bike Florida back in Florida. So, it was really nice to hear. I have a little surprise. Bob doesn't know about it, and I love giving him surprises because I'm not so sure he likes them so much. But next month at our next meeting, we're going to give away our annual awards for BPAC, and that's always a lot of fun for me. But we've been trying to think, how do you recognize a legend? It's not so easy to do, but starting next month, we have a Lifetime Achievement Award for those folks that have been kind of committed to bicycle pedestrian efforts through a long period of time. And starting next month and for the foreseeable future, the Lifetime Achievement Award will now be the Robert Kalm Award of Excellence.
Very good. Yeah. Very good.
Very nice.
Very nice, Kim. Thank you so much.
Those kinds of surprises I like. So.
Yes, that's right. Very good.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is the consent agenda. Mr. Kalm.
We have on the consent agenda the TPO board minutes from March meeting, committee appointments, finance and budget, and the work order for the bicycle pedestrian master plan update, which, if you get a chance, take a look at it. It's going to be a very active program, and will really take some time and energy and thought, and I'm wish I were here still to do this kind of thing. So, okay, that's it for the consent agenda.
All right, thank you. So I need a motion for consent agenda items 5A through D.
Mayor Reynolds would move for approval 5A, B, C, and D.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval by Mr. Randall, second by Ms. Lopez. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item 6 is the action items. A, approval of the Resolution 18-18 fiscal year 1822, the Transportation Improvement Program, which we refer to as the TIP amendment. Ms. Georganna.
Yes, this is a housekeeping item. The DOT has requested an amendment to our currently adopted TIP so that we can be consistent with the DOT work program. And the first project is on page 40. It's the reconstruction of State Road A1A from Long Point Drive to George King Boulevard, and it adds $2.6 million for the design phase in fiscal year 2019, mostly using the TPO's SU funds. The design will be for a curb and gutter with medians, wider sidewalks, and it's basically to make the corridor safer, more urbanized. And this project will tie into the realignment of A1A and International Drive and Atlantic. So those are two big projects for the city of Cape Canaveral. Beginning on page 41 are 3 ITS projects, Intelligent Transportation System. And ITS is the fiber, the hardware, the cameras, et cetera, that will allow Melbourne to build on its existing ITS system. So those projects are Babcock Street from Ebert Road to NASA Boulevard. It's for $156,000 in fiscal year 2019 for design. The next one is New Haven Avenue from Dairy Road to US 1. It's $155,000 in fiscal year 19 for design. And then the last one is Harbor City Boulevard from University to Babcock, $235,000 in fiscal year 2019 for design. So we are asking for approval of Resolution 18-18, amending our fiscal year 18 through 22 TIP, and we need that via roll call vote, please.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gillette. Any questions for Gillette? All right. Yeah, Mr. Forrester.
Since I'm kind of new to the
Okay.
TPO process, am I understanding this right, that these were not projects that we had on our to-do list, but they came up on the state's to-do list, and the state said, hey, let's make our list match? Is that?
No, sir, these were priority projects for the TPO. So these were projects that were submitted to us by the municipalities, the City of Melbourne as well as the City of Cape Canaveral. They had been on the priority list for a while, and we were able to use the TPO's federal funds to fund these projects because they were high priorities. We did that towards the latter part of last year, and the DOT presented them at the work program presentation probably in, was it December, November? And the reason why they are not in the TPO's adopted TIP, but the DOT is getting ready to advertise these projects for design. And so now they have to be incorporated into our adopted TIP, so the TIP, the TIP, and the work program can all match. That has to be they call that planning consistency, if that explains it a little better.
All right.
Sounds good. The projects were selected by the TPO and submitted to DOT, and they've been waiting in the queue
Yes.
for the money. And now the money's caught up with our project prioritization. So we're putting them in the program so that the department can actually get working on implementing it.
All right. Any other questions? All right, seeing none?
Yeah, if I may.
Yes.
Frank, I address it only because I'm involved as one of the winners. Since 1997, this has been our project in Cape Canaveral. I run 10 elections on that. And I still don't have it, but
And now he's mayor.
what?
Former
You said
mayor.
mayor, you referred to yourself as Mayor Randall just a second ago.
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
Oh, it
No,
was.
you didn't.
Was,
I said the mayor there.
oh,
You said Mayor
Yeah, I
Randall.
nobody.
But then you should have-
Just real quick, the MPO adopted this in August 11th, 1999, Frank.
wow.
I wasn't on the TPO then.
It wasn't. But it's a, when we talk about a 20-year plan, they're serious.
Oh, I found that out with Barnes.
All right, so Mr. Randall, are you going to make a
Thank you,
motion?
Mayor. What?
Are you going to make a motion?
Well, if there's no other discussion, I would be honored if
Yes,
the
go
chair would
ahead.
let me move for approval of, no, there's a roll call vote.
Well, we got to
have to have
approve
a
it, and then we got
And
to,
I
yeah,
would
you got to make a
certainly
motion
move for approval of the roll call vote.
on Resolution 18-18.
18-18, amending the 2018-22 Transportation Improvement Plan.
Okay. I need.
Second.
All right,
I'll
so
second.
I have a second by Mr. Allender, and further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Allender?
Yes.
Blanco? Yes. Forrester?
Yes.
Holton?
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Dehan?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Osmer?
Yes.
Randalls?
Yes.
Santiago?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Very
Miss
good.
anyone?
I think we got it. All right, good, the motion passes. And congratulations, after 20 years. All right, item 6B is the approval of the SCTPO Executive Director 2017 Performance Evaluation, and Mr. Kugelman will present that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is our annual report regarding the Executive Director's evaluation, and this is probably one of the more interesting ones that I've ever seen. Over the years, whenever I've presented this, I've always talked about Bob's ratings, which have always been high. They've always been over 4 on a 5-point scale. But the point I've always stressed to people is that, well, you're not going to see an evaluation with 5, a perfect score, because that would mean that every single rater on the committee would have to rate every category as 5. And that's, while it's not impossible, it's virtually impossible. Well, I'm now eating my words, because this evaluation of Mr. Com is beyond stellar. It's perfect. He got a rating of 5 from every member of the executive committee that participated in the evaluation. Not only unusual, but really commendable, and realizing that we have a true superstar here. In the report are the comments of the various members of the executive committee with regard to performance, and the executive committee also discussed what they would normally discuss, which is a pay or bonus of some sort. Obviously, a pay increase wouldn't do Bob much good, since his last day is April the 27th. However, the executive committee, after a good, strong discussion, did look at the issue of a bonus. And a bonus is permitted under state law, assuming that there's policies and procedures of the entity that support the concept of a bonus for a possibility for employees, which our policies and procedures do support it. It's based on a personnel study that was done some years ago for the MPO. The important thing I want to stress to you about the bonus, and this was made very clear at the executive committee meeting, is that the reason for this bonus is not just thank you, Bob, you've done a great job performing for us over the last 30 years. It really is based on performance, and it was partially based on historical improvement in performance. First of all, if you get a rating, an average rating of 4, that's an outstanding rating. It's somebody that's obviously performing at top capacity, recognizing that 5 is virtually impossible to get, even though mathematically it's conceivable. His ratings over the last couple of years, 3 years ago was just a skosh over 4.1. Last year it was around 4.5, 4.6, and this year it's a perfect 5. And all the evaluations and all the governing bodies that I've worked with over the years, I don't think I've ever seen anybody get a perfect score until this. This will probably be the only time in my career that I see it.
Mine too.
Well spoken. So, Madam Chair, members of the governing board, what we're asking for you all to do, the executive committee has voted and recommended the evaluation average of 5 for Mr. Com. We will need discussion and a motion to approve that. The second thing that the executive committee has recommended is a bonus based on historical performance for the last 30 years, and especially the last couple of years, of $13,000. And we would need a motion and approval after discussion on that as well.
That bonus was $13,300?
Oh, $13,300,
Right.
I'm sorry.
10%.
But who's counting?
I just did, so.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I need 2 motions. One is to approve the executive director's performance evaluation overall score.
So moved.
All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Holton, second by Ms. Moore. Discussion?
No.
Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Second motion is to accept the recommendation of the one-time bonus, well, it would be the only bonus, of $13,300.
Mayor?
So moved.
I'm sorry. We need to change that wording.
Okay.
That's performance recognition from
Oh,
bonus.
all right.
We need to discuss that.
Okay, a performance
Recognition.
recognition bonus of $13,300.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Ms. Lopez, second by Mr. Alsmer. Discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Forster.
One thing that comes to my mind, I mean, it seems like Mr. Combs just now getting it right, so shouldn't we keep him a little longer?
Yes, I agree. Yes.
I'm running out. I'm on drop from the Florida retirement system, and my drop is expiring. So
I didn't give you a hard time.
it was locked in 5 years ago. So
All right, very good. So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And I vote aye, and the motion passes. Thank you. All right. Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much.
Mr.
This
Combs.
is-
Thank you for all you've done. Item number 7 is reports and presentations, and at 7A is Port Canaveral Master Plan, and that would be, well, Mr. Bastille?
If I could
Yes.
lead this off. About 2 years ago, I was at a meeting, and you know how when you're talking, sometimes words just pop into your head, you don't know where they come from, they just happen to be the right thing at the right time. And I was at a meeting at the port, it was out the Discovery Tower, and I coined the word, I said, Brevard is different because we are quintimodal. And everybody looks at me like quintimodal, 5 modes. So that is roads, railroad, airports,
Seaport.
seaport,
Air and space.
and space. 5, yes, and space. That's why we're quintimodal. There's no place else in the country that's like that. So that presents special opportunities and special challenges to TPO. They're all transportation. They all fall within your purview for planning and coordination. So we have the opportunity here to have presentations on the Port Master Plan, on the Melbourne Airport, and on the Nassau Causeway Bridge at KSC, which touches on the other modal facilities that we have in Brevard that others don't have, and that we are very fortunate to have because of the benefit they provide to the whole community. So I just wanted to make that quintimodal point.
All right, very good. And
It's an excellent introduction.
yes,
Yeah, my name is Bill Crow. I'm Senior Director of Facilities, Engineering, and Construction for the Port Authority. And I was going to start off with a special thanks recognition to Bob Cam, his pursuit of the Port Authority and efforts to include us in this organization are greatly appreciated in the organization from top to bottom. So wish you Godspeed in your retirement, and thanks for all that you've done for us. Captain Murray, our CEO, he sends his regards to the group. He was unable to make it here today, but he especially wanted me to thank you for the adoption of the State Road 401 Bridge Replacement Amendment that was passed by this board last committee meeting. So we're very grateful for the partnership. It's my pleasure to step you through the Port Canaveral 30-year strategic master plan. What the master plan is to the Port Authority is certainly a planning tool. It's a tool that we use to plan not only where things go in the port, but also financial projections. And it's a bit of a zoning ordinance for us. We don't have a separate planning and zoning ordinance, so we really do depend heavily upon this document to help us know where we should put future developments. So with that said, and I'm going to direct you to the slides and the projection screen, the long-range vision, the long-range master plan is a 30-year plan. So it starts out at the very practical level, and we ask ourselves, what are the needs of the community? Excuse me, what can we do to support the users? How can we make the port sustainable? And how can we meet its mission, our mission, as defined by the charter? Excuse me. It also has to be visionary, so we're looking out 30 years to the year approximately 2048. What will Canaveral be like in 30 years? What will Florida be like then? And what's going to be important? So you can see there's this dichotomy between the very near practical definition of our master plan and where will we be in 30 years. Obviously, it's much easier for us to focus on the next 5 to 7 years. We get greater resolution as far as our capital projects go and what development we will be facing. This next slide is actually a promotional video that I wanted to share with you. It's just a couple minutes long. It really represents what the port is about. All right, thank you for that.
Nice.
It's a much better improvement over the prior year's video for sure. We paid all of about $20 for the video, and that was really the cost of the music. We hired an exceptionally talented intern out of the University of Miami, and she practically did the entire video herself. All the drone footage is actually taken by, we have our own drone, and one of my guys is a certified drone pilot. So if you don't have a drone in your organization, I would encourage you, please pick one up, invest in it. It pays itself. I think the drone costs $2,000, and you can pay $3,000 to $5,000 just for a commercial drone pilot to come in. So very proud of that video. And if you caught it through the video, it really represents what the port is about. We have 4 major lines of business. The first one's very obvious, it's cruise, and I'm going to start with that, but we also have cargo, we have recreation, we have real estate. We have real estate because we're a landlord port. We own all 3,000 acres, 1,000 of which is dry, 2,000 of which is submerged, and we rent those parcels out, and those leases are recorded at the county, and the tenants pay property taxes on those leases and the vertical structures that they build. But I'm going to start with cruise. Very excited about cruise. What the consultant did for us, Bermelo Ahamil, in developing the master plan is really try to project out where are we going to be cruise-wise, passenger count-wise, over the next 30 years. So they have some algorithms that they run. They track current trends in the industry. BA is a very reputable consultant that has done master plans for many ports in the U.S. and abroad as well. And you'll see we predict when we need to add those fancy cruise terminals. Some of you may have seen cruise terminal number 1, heard about our renovations to 5 and 10 recently. I'm going to use the mouse here. We've identified that approximately 2020, I have to have a new cruise terminal open. Doors open December of 2019. And so we're working very hurriedly on that $150 million terminal project. Terminal berth, dredging, boarding bridges. Based on passenger count, again, we're projecting another terminal in about 2025, then 2030, 31. The terminals, as we project out, aren't necessarily based on any agreement with a cruise line. Nonetheless, we anticipate passenger counts are going to grow. The market is very strong. Florida is the oasis. We are the second largest cruise port in the world. Miami's number one based on paid passenger count. We've traded places with Everglades over the last decade. We're number 2. So I think we can all be very proud of that and the impact that it has on the region. And we threw in another cruise terminal way out there in 2045, just acknowledging that we needed to build another one eventually. We are running out of room, though, and as you'll see by this photo, what's represented by the number 1 on the right and half of the garage in number 2. This is down near the boat ramp at Jetty Park. This is our new cruise terminal that we're planning. And again, we're in the middle of design on the terminal and the berth and permitting and all that, and we're starting to bid that work out. So it will be doors open in late 2019 or early 20. You see we've kind of mirrored that same approach to a redevelopment of cruise terminal number 2, which is currently where the gaming ship operates out of, Victory Casino. If I go through these slides really quickly, I apologize. It's like a 40-minute presentation that Stephen warned me. The floor opens up after 10 minutes. So anyways, I'm going to blow through them. Feel free to stop and ask questions. So this is the Northside Cruise Terminal area. We have planned improvements for the south side of the Cruise Terminal 10 Peninsula. That is one of our very few undeveloped shorelines. So we are limited on land. We are land poor. We are also shoreline poor, which is where the port makes its money. Anything that goes across that bulkhead, that berth, passengers or cargo. There is a potential to expand terminal number 5 again. Right now, we just expanded it, but it's still somewhat limited on the size of vessel it can take. So it was built in an era where 2,000 passengers was a large ship. Today, with the Oasis, 6,500 passengers. It's a small floating city, plus about 3,000 in crew. So you can have over 10,000 people on one of these large cruise vessels. Going to move right into, this is just another slide that represents the cruise capital program. The total projected master plan budget is a $2.6 billion number. You probably read that in the Florida Today article. It's not that I have a $2.6 billion project planned. At least not that my commissioner has informed me of yet. But it is projected all of the capital that we will need to spend on our various lines of business. That would include port funds, but also public-private partnerships. When we built Cruise Terminal number 1, Royal Caribbean partnered with us, and they paid $50 million. That's basically the cost of the terminal building, garage excluded, berth excluded, but the building was a P3 with Royal Caribbean. Cruise Terminal number 8 was the same story with Disney about 20 years ago. And so you see here again the capital outlay required for those 4 projected terminal projects moving forward. About $1.15 billion. On the cargo side, very proud of this photo. This photo represents North Cargo Berth 5 and 6, which was the recipient of a substantial amount of FSTED grant funding from the state of Florida, from FDOT. It was a great partnership. Those are the 2 cranes that we refurbished after purchasing from Savannah. And this yellow stick crane in the foreground is actually leased by SpaceX. So that's the crane that they use to pull their rocket off the barge onto the dock before they lay it down and transport it into Canaveral Air Force Station. So it really does capture a lot of what the port is about on the cargo side. Cargo is projected to grow. I can't tell you how important Canaveral is to the region, to the county, to Central Florida. There is a tremendous amount of construction materials coming through the port, aggregates, rock, petroleum. After the passing of both these recent hurricanes, Matthew and Irma, myself being a resident of Beachside, Brevard County, was very grateful to see the fuel trucks rolling post-hurricane. Within 24 to 48 hours after Irma, we had 350 fuel trucks run through Seaport Canaveral, the main fuel terminal at Port Canaveral, and headed to Central Florida, headed to gas stations in your neighborhood. And we are continuing to project growth on the petroleum front. Also, construction materials headed to the I-4 corridor, headed to Central Florida. If you drive around the port today, you'll see it full of many things, 2 of which are FPL light poles of all materials headed to Puerto Rico, and lumber. We have lumber all over the port that is supporting this Central Florida construction industry. So this is the north area of the port. On the cargo side, I am currently, we just had our environmental kickoff meeting with North Cargo Berth 8, about $20 million. It's a 35-foot deep draft cargo berth. It's going to have heavy lift, so we'll be able to take project cargo, rockets. It's multi-use. We'll be able to take bulk cargo, aggregates, salt, lime rock, so on and so forth. This area between 2 and 3 has been identified as a potential spaceport, so we're really excited to be a part of that space industry on the maritime side. So now they're landing rockets in the ocean on vessels. We used to call it a barge, and SpaceX was offended. It's a drone ship. They're landing rockets on the drone ship, and they'll bring them into to the port and offload them. And the Coast Guard base, they own that property. We've identified an expanded general use cargo facility here. Some containers, yes. They've indicated some potential future cranes. These could be the rail-mounted cranes that we currently have, or they could be more of a mobile harbor crane scenario. Additional automobiles, consolidated bulk area. Liquefied natural gas is a very safe and environmentally friendly fuel that Blue Origin's rocket's going to be using, and a lot of the cruise lines are building their ships to use LNG as a fuel. This is that Seaport Canaveral Marine Terminal that I was talking about. And then SpaceX, number 4 and 5, SpaceX has leased the former Space Hab building, used to process shuttle bay cargo, and now SpaceX has leased that, and they're making really good use of the clean rooms, the labs, the high bay cranes. It's a fantastic built-to-suit facility for the space industry. They've leased the parcel number 5, about 2.5 acres, for a potential future planned refurbishment facility for their rockets. And again, here's a kind of a breakdown of our future capital burn on cargo projects. For certainly less than what we have planned for cruise. About 80% of our revenue comes from the cruise. About 8% comes from cargo. And so we've adjusted our capital plan commensurate with that division. Spaceport. So we started to talk about what we have planned. You'll see the image here of the Falcon 9 landed on its drone ship. And back in port, that's that yellow stick crane about ready to pull off the barge. The area that we're currently focusing on at North Cargo Berth 8 is right next door to an undeveloped site of about 20 acres that could be developed for many different uses. Potential spaceport as well, support local job market. Blue Origin, SpaceX, and a host of other companies are in discussions with Space Florida. I know that Space Coast TPO has been a part of some of those discussions about what that means for the region. Landing rockets offshore, even some talk of trying to launch rockets offshore as well, which I find very interesting. So you see about $80 million is what we've projected for our part of that build out. So commercial fishing, it's kind of an interesting photo, right? It is a huge part of what we are at Port Canaveral. It's been with us since our inception. It's actually written into our charter. There's no getting away from commercial fishing, and we wouldn't want to. So come to Port Canaveral, you'll be able to pick up fresh caught fish and shrimp from the region, and we are committed to supporting that industry. This slide really, it's in the Cove area, and it's a developed working waterfront that might include commercial fishing, tugs, potentially a pilot boat. Parks and Recreation, we have more recreational facilities than all other 14 deep water ports combined at Canaveral. I worked at Port Miami, I worked at Port of Houston. Port Canaveral is so unique in the gem of Jetty Park and some of our other parks like Rodney Ketchum. We have a little waterfront park on Restaurant Row. And more to come. This photo is actually old because Hurricane Matthew took out this handrail, and then Irma took out this handrail. So we have new aluminum handrails and lighting along that pier. It's a beautiful pier. I'm sure many of you have been out to Jetty Park and really enjoyed that gem of an asset for us. So we have identified, and I really want to focus on this with the group. We've identified the potential for a long linear park in the master plan. You know Jetty Park and the boat ramp, which is a world-class boat ramp, free, we don't charge anything. It was built in conjunction with Terminal 1, and it's like 10 minutes to the buoy offshore, and that's just unheard of. We attract a lot of guests from the region on great fishing days to use that boat ramp. Then we have Rodney Ketchum Park at the other end. and we're in the process of refurbishing that. A potential cove, expanded cove park in this area, and then a long linear bike path pedway that connects the two. And in our discussions with DOT District 5 and the expansion of 528, Rodney Ketchum has been identified as a potential trailhead. They're expanding 528. They're going to put a 12-foot bikeway on the north side of that expanded 6-lane road. And this could be a potential trailhead where people can come, park, unload their bicycles, or go on a walk on that expanded bikeway pedway. In the Marina District, pretty much anything you need to have done on your boat, you can get done in this district. Get your engine rebuilt, get your canopy relaced, even buy a T-top for your boat. And we left it fairly general. We have Blue Points Marina. It's a dry stack marina. And we have about 1,000 slips in wet and dry slips combined between 6 privately held marinas. And we are just projecting some general consolidation of some of those smaller used parcels as leases become available. Another dry stack marina potentially in the future. And yeah, we do have, it was amazing though, the response we got pre-hurricane. We put these boat owners on notice, the marinas on notice. We have photos from one day to like 3 days later, and we went from full to like 3 boats left in the water. So getting great response from our tenant partners on pre-hurricane prep. Commercial development, we'll roll through this. This is the Cove area. You will recognize Exploration Tower. Currently there is a stormwater pond. This vision is that it's very visionary. It's showing a projected connection of that pond to the harbor, so it'd be tidally influenced. You'd be able to come through the locks in your small craft, come into the Cove area, maybe pull up to a finger pier by a restaurant. Rising Tides just opened here. It's the old Aldino's Bakery. It's a wonderful restaurant. I encourage you guys, if you're at the port, go check it out. What this represents is there's a little bit of an engineering challenge. So me being a civil engineer, we'd have to come up with alternate means for stormwater development to compensate for the pond. However, this is that working waterfront that we discussed, and you'll see a slide on a potential okay, this is a slide on just some interaction we had with our commercial fishing entities, letting us know that the original design of an 85-foot width needed to be expanded to 150 foot. We really did involve the public and our constituents, stakeholders in developing of this master plan. You can notice that we haven't changed anything along Restaurant Row. So the grills, fish lips, Rusty's, they're all going to stay. We're not moving anybody, and I'm sure you understand that was a very, very key point for us to make. And Veronica Narvaez, who's with us and serves on the TAC as one of my project managers, actually just completed this parking lot. We added 327 new spaces to the Cove area. Well lit, security cameras, just a great little project. And there's another example of working with the commercial fishing working waterfront constituents. This is an undeveloped parcel that is not adjacent to deep water berth. It's on the Banana River side. It's a 26-acre parcel. It's been discussed as a potential site for the aquarium. You may have heard some discussion about a potential aquarium. It is identified as a potential in the master plan. We wanted to make sure that we capture that. They wouldn't need all 26 acres. They were looking at a smaller parcel. And we could just continue to work with Brevard County Zoo as they pursue funding opportunities for their aquarium. Then what I was going to refer to earlier, this is an expanded convention center that complements the existing Exploration Tower. Again, this is not something that the Port Authority would undertake, but we would certainly consider, you know, a P3 project, somebody that would come in and build and manage a convention center, a small conference center on port property. So we have a consolidated rental car facility. My colleagues from the airport, they deal with similar parking problems. Orlando Airport in the same boat. Other ports as well. We have a tremendous drive-in market in Port Canaveral. Compared to Miami, that might be a more international fly-in market for their cruise ships. So we really, parking is a premium, and being land poor, developing a multi-story parking facility is something that we identify that we need to consider moving forward. So this is about a 2,000 space overflow parking / consolidated rental car facility at the port. This is right adjacent to A1A and George King Boulevard. So I will leave you with this slide. It gives a good representation, again, of the long-range vision, 30 years out. What could we potentially look like, and how do we get there from here? And this is what our crystal ball told us this go-round. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, Madam Chair, the opportunity, and would be glad to take any questions,
All right.
as
Thank
long
you,
as they're
Mr.
really easy questions.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. Any questions from Mr. Crow? Mr. Googleman?
Just one.
Yes, sir.
You indicated that as far as cargo, y'all are getting a lot of aggregate that's
Yes.
coming in. Where is that coming from, out of curiosity?
So I'm trying to think. I believe a lot of it is coming from the Bahamas, from mines in the Bahamas. I may be confusing that with Morton salt, because we get a lot of salt that comes in from the Bahamas as well. But a lot of limestone comes in. We do get granite, and that's not coming from the Bahamas. That may be coming from up north, the Carolinas. Might be a coastwise barge bringing that down.
Interesting. Thank
Unfortunately,
you.
you got the engineer. You didn't get the cargo expert. But
All right. Thank you, Mr.
okay,
Crow.
thank you very much.
Oh, Mr. Randalls.
Yes, sir.
You're
Mr.
not
Mayor.
thinking of annexing Cape Canal and turning this into a parking lot, are you?
Well, yeah, I was going to bring that up, but is this the right opportunity to talk about that? So I can attest that Bob was at the last meeting, so, and even though his name wasn't on the roll call, he had a lot of those good questions. So
All right. Thank you
you.
again. All right. Next item is 7B, the Orlando-Melbourne International Airport Master Plan. And that will be Mr. Cliff Graham from the Orlando-Melbourne Airport.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Board. I am Cliff Graham. I'm the Director of Operations and Maintenance at the Orlando-Melbourne International Airport, and it's really my pleasure to be here today to speak to you about our master plan and our process. I have Mike Arnold with me today. He's a consultant with ESA, and he's a partner with us doing our master plan. In airports, master plans are critically important. We go out about 20 years with our master plan. Our last master plan was done in about 2004. So related to timing, it's really critical that we're doing our master plan right now. We're just about wrapping it up. The other thing related to timing is we're in a very up-tempo construction mode. We're currently rehabilitating all 3 of our runways. As we speak right now, our main air carrier runway is shut down for 70 days, and we have a 24-hour mill and paving operation going on right now. So basically what that means is all our air carrier traffic, Delta, American, Porter Airlines, they're all flying in and out of our airport on our north runway, our 6,000-foot runway. So, we need to get that project done pretty quick so we can get them back to the big runway. We're also doing a new air traffic control tower, which we're proud of. But the big thing with master plans in airports, it really is a roadmap. And as many of you probably know, we don't collect taxes, ad valorem taxes at the airport. We fund all our projects ourselves with help from mainly the FDOT and FAA through grants. And as it relates to that, our projects need to be on the master plan, or at least be very consistent to the master plan. So therefore, it's really important. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mike, and we'll be happy to ask any questions or answer any questions when we're done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Thank you.
Do we have the present? I guess the first question is, do we have the presentation to queue up? All right, there we go. All right, good start.
All right.
Good to see everyone today. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. We're going to keep the discussion fairly high level today. But we do want to hit on some of the highlights and what drives the master planning process. It's a little bit different than what drives the port process. And a lot of it is in conjunction with a working effort in conjunction with FDOT and FAA, our partners in this process. It's a collaborative effort. As part of the process, we interviewed and engaged with more than 50 stakeholders throughout the area. Both users of the airport, tenants of the airport, and various entities, the TDC, EDC, various different aspects that are involved with the airport efforts. One of the key things to understand is that the airport master planning has kind of two different elements. We have a regulatory element and we have a strategic element. The regulatory element is really looking at what do we need to do to make sure that we can move aircraft and provide for aircraft in a safe and efficient manner. The strategic element is looking at the different opportunities to use the property in a way that it provides the most strategic advantage. And some of the key elements that we looked at in this master plan process was updating the airport layout plan. So the last master plan was updated in 2004. 10 years had passed, and a lot of FAA safety regulations had come out on how different aspects of the airfield were designed. And so we incorporate those changes through this process. There's also the Airport Geographic Information System process. And this is, if you've heard FAA refer to next-gen implementation of the new airspace procedures that will be taking place throughout the United States, this AGIS process is what they use to collect all of the obstruction and basically the data that they need to do to have available so that they can plan their procedures. So that's a key component. And then finally, there's a whole boundary survey and property mapping, title search and everything else. Because when FAA and FDOT are providing funding for different projects on the airport, they want to verify that the airport actually owns those properties and that you have clear title to those properties. So that's kind of that regulatory aspect. When we get into the more strategic aspect, we get into the making sure that we're developing things in a way that are the best for the long-term development. So when we started the master plan process, there was 15 projects going on in the airport. This airport was the envy of most of the country. There was the Embraer expansion, Grumman expansion. We had the maintenance, repair, and overhaul, the large aircraft facilities being implemented, a number of aviation-related projects that were going into place on the airport. The FAA was getting to the point where they were saying, you know what, time out. You guys are developing so quick. We want to make sure that we can take a step back and take a breath, and let's make sure that the place we're putting all of these facilities is the right place to put them. So that's really what this process did. It allowed us to take a step back in the midst of all these projects that were going on and try and figure out what's the best place for us to put these projects in, and what do we need to do to accommodate that long-term aviation demand. So we're not making decisions right now that are going to preclude the ability to do something we really probably wanted to do down the road. And then finally, the customer service side of things is a major focus of the study. There's a terminal transformation program that's looking at a refresh of the terminal. The terminal is now 25, almost 30 years old, so it's looking at how do we bring it up to current standards and expectations of what the public is looking for, and, based on today's, I guess, the other facilities throughout the country. The other aspect is the surface aspect, the surface access aspect, and providing some type of a direct connect to I-95 to make it more accessible. We go through a very structured process, again, this high level, various working papers that took place throughout the study, stakeholder involvement that took place throughout the study. And really, it's an evolutionary process. So it's really getting in, understanding where we want to ultimately go, and trying to figure out what the path of getting there is, and then ultimately coordinating the final results with the different agencies to make sure that we're checking all the boxes that they need us to check as well. From an aviation projection standpoint, we're currently about 225,000 passengers, and plane passengers. So this means passengers that are getting on an aircraft, not necessarily getting off an aircraft. So you double that number if you're looking for total passengers that you're processing through that terminal. By 2025, we're looking at that number to just about double, and by 2035, we're looking at that number to about triple. So about 5.5% annual increase over that 20-year time period. Operations, about 123,000 in the base year, and we're looking for that operational level to increase significantly throughout that 2035 time frame. One of the things that many of the businesses that are going into the airport have very limited effect on the operations. They provide a lot of economic value for very low operation increase. The actual use of the aircraft or of the runways and the operational flight training drives a lot of the increase in operations. So, but like things like the Embraer facility, that might be a couple operations a day versus other types of uses that would be much higher levels. So. And then based aircraft, we're expecting the need to be able to store more aircraft on the airport. So where are we going to put those aircraft and make sure that we've got enough room for those? And let's see here. So I think the slides might be just a little bit out of order. There are 3 CIS facilities in Broward County. The airport is one of them, the port and the spaceport are the other 2. What that means is that there's eligibility for funding for a different grant pool that might be available. Some of the opportunities that we looked at were the I-95 Ellis Road interchange, potentially tie in with the rail spur for the Florida East Coast Railroad line that goes through just east of the airport. Use of potentially access to the intercoastal waterway, and then Port Canaveral and the spaceport itself. Getting into the Ellis Road extension, that's a key one that as we're projecting passengers, it's really hard to understand how that could influence things, given that it is a little bit difficult to access the airport right now. One thing we do know is that that's a critical component given the number of jobs and employees that we have on the airport and the ability to have that improved access. And we do expect that it will have an impact on the passenger demand as well. Melbourne's an incredibly convenient airport to fly into and out of. It's just challenging to get to. That's, and this would help remedy that. I'll go back up. So this graphic, it's a little hard to see on the image here. The colors are a little washed out. The airport has 3 runways. As Cliff alluded, all 3 are in the process of being rehabbed. There's the north parallel runway, the long main parallel runway, and then there's a crosswind runway to the southeast side of the airport. The north runway primarily provides service to the corporate activity and the training activity. The long runway is primarily the commercial service runway, and then the runway that's kind of the southeast there, that serves a lot of the training as well. FAT's facility is in that part of the airport, right down here, and this is the runway that I'm talking about. This is the terminal area, southeast side here. There's areas that are designated in kind of a dark blue area throughout the airport. And I'm kind of going over them to hopefully allow you to see them a little bit better. These areas that are designated in dark blue are areas where there are already lease options from the existing tenants. They are, and in fact, this aerial is from 2014. Many of these areas have already infilled. So the Embraer expansion has already filled a number of these areas. The Grumman expansion that's taking place has also filled some of these areas. And what you can see when you look at how many of these areas are blue, there's an awful lot of the airport that's already accounted for. So trying to figure out what we have left and how best to develop that was one of the key issues we had to tackle. These kind of magenta areas that are scattered throughout were areas and parcels that were identified that could serve non-aviation purposes. They could be used for they don't have direct airfield access, and they're areas that could be used to develop, to provide economic benefit, and they could also provide additional revenue enhancement for the airport itself. One of the things that we deal with in the airport environment, well, in the port side of things, you have a lot of land that's submerged land, so you don't have access to that. In the airport environment, we have a lot of land that's aircraft movement land. So it's used and set aside as safety areas, runway protection zones, and various other areas around the airport that are limited in what you can do with them, because you got to preserve that ability to get into and get out of the airport. We've got a couple minor runway extensions that we're preserving. Extension of the north runway from 6,000 to 6,500 feet, and an extension of the south runway to just over 12,000 feet, I believe, is what it comes to. That's to preserve the ability to maybe get some of that international wide-body activity over to Europe at some point in the future. So we want to make sure that we protect as much of that looking long-term as we can. Overall, we're looking at about 102 projects in the 20-year time frame, about $465 million in total costs. Many of those projects that we've identified are eligible for FAA and FDOT grant funding, as well as CIS funding. So whether or not the funding will be available at the time, there's a lot of different elements that are available for that funding. And we also recognize that we may not develop all of those projects over that 20-year time frame, but we want to make sure that we have the flexibility and that they're included in the program, because we want to be able to figure out how to accommodate those if we do have the specific demand to warrant those. And I don't know if you have anything else to add, Cliff, but that's all I really have today. So.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Any questions for Mr. Arnold or Mr. Graham? Seeing none? All right. Very good. Thank you for your presentation. Next is 7C, NASA Causeway Project Development and Environment, the PD&E study. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary McGehee, and I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation. We're excited today to bring our kickoff presentation to you. We're starting a new PD&E study. It's the NASA Causeway PD&E study, which is our Project Development and Environment study. Do I click it? All right. I just didn't want to turn around. I thought you were handling it over there. Sorry. So in our presentation, I'm actually joined with Ralph Beauvais, and Ralph is with the consulting firm of Volkert Incorporated. He's our project manager on the consultant side of the house. And in our presentation, what we'll see is a description of the project. We'll explain the PD&E study process itself, talk about our schedule, and provide our contact information to you. So I'll turn it over to Ralph now.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, Chairman, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Director Com. For the record, my name is Ralph Beauvais. I'm the consultant project manager with Volkert Incorporated. I'm leading the team on Mary's behalf, the consultant team, as we move forward with this PD&E study. And as Mary said, we're here today simply to just let you know that we've started the project. It is a project development and environment study with a few added elements that I'll talk about in just a few minutes. The project is focused on the NASA Causeway Bridge replacement. It includes the bridge and the appropriate roadway approaches for a distance of approximately 10,000 feet. And as you know, this is the main corridor that leads into Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. So it's part of that quintimodal aspect of the Space Coast TPO. I can't say that word. The existing bridge actually consists of dual structures that were built in 1964 to support the development of Kennedy Space Center and Canaveral Air Force Station. The bridges are approximately 3,000 feet long. They are supported by a number of spans as they cross the Indian River, with the main span being a double bascule bridge or movable structure. When that bridge is in its closed position, its vertical clearance over the river is approximately 28 feet and supports vessel passage through a navigational channel of approximately 90 feet. So this is a PD&E study that is being funded with federal money, so we will follow the process, the Florida Department of Transportation's PD&E process and the National Environmental Policy Act provisions of that process. We anticipate the environmental document to be a categorical exclusion, which is the lower level of environmental documentation to maintain federal funding eligibility for future phases. In this process for this particular project, because of the accelerated schedule and the desire by NASA to have this project ready for construction in early 2021, we are overlapping the PD&E study with final design. So we will be doing engineering analyses as part of the PD&E study, but also with an eye towards final design. The same goes for the environmental analysis. the work we do in the PD&E study will have a focus and an emphasis on final permitting. So in a 3-year process, and I'll talk more about the schedule in a moment, we'll be able to complete the PD&E study and the design components of this project. As a federally funded project and following the process, we will have to evaluate and identify a number of different alternatives, including a no-build that stands for our baseline that we compare all of the pros and cons of build alternatives, including a rehabilitation, a replacement in kind, and then also looking at a high-level fixed span structure that could be developed on either its existing alignment, slightly to the north or slightly to the south. So those are all the different types of alternatives that we'll be looking at as we move forward with the project. Lots of agency coordination. The actual lead agency for the NEPA process is yet to be determined. There are extensive conversations ongoing with the Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration. We have cooperating agencies, including NASA and the U.S. Coast Guard, and then also permitting agencies, again, the Coast Guard, the Corps of Engineers, and Water Management District. Local government partnerships is very important on projects, on all of our transportation projects, so we will be coming before you at key milestones during the study to keep you apprised of our progress, also working with the county, its commission, its public works and planning departments, as well as the city of Titusville. So our overall schedule for the PD&E study and design is approximately 36 months. We just started 2 months ago with our notice to proceed. We're using this forum to serve as our public kickoff to sort of help us accelerate through the process. Over the next coming months and throughout this year, we'll be working on the alternatives analysis that will lead to an alternatives public meeting, hopefully in December of this year. Coming out of that meeting with a recommended alternative that we could further refine, begin our environmental and engineering documentation, and go to a public hearing in October of 2019, with the final study approval occurring in February of 2020. Now, we'll still have about another year to finalize the final design and obtain all the permits that are required for that design process. So this project, being the PD&E and the design, is anticipated to be completed in January of 2021. So with that, Madam Chair, we stand for any questions.
All right.
Our contact information is provided for you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Kahn.
I'd like to add a little bit to what Ralph said. This is a very unusual project and a very important project. Unusual in the sense that the PD&E study is actually being paid for by NASA. It says federal funds, but it's not federal highway funds. It's federal NASA funds. That NASA has agreed to fund the cost of the PD&E, and through a sub-agreement with Federal Highway Administration, Eastern Lands or something, and then that has a sub-agreement with the DOT, who's actually going to do the work. This is a federal bridge. It is not a state bridge. It is not a county bridge. It is a federal bridge that belongs to NASA. And that is presenting some complications. For instance, who's the lead agency? Who's in charge of this project? It's a NASA bridge, it's a federal bridge, but the DOT is doing the actual work. Got a call from Steve Gilmore, who's sitting in the back, a couple years ago, saying, Bob, we're NASA. We launch rockets. We don't know how to build bridges. That's not what we do. Can you help us out? I don't even know who to call. So that's where it began. And very pleased. It's one of the things I'm really proud of, that we've been able to be involved in a project of this magnitude. But I did want to lay that out in the background. There's been 2 years or so of negotiations back and forth between DeLand and Tallahassee and Washington and the center on how to get this going. What's the process to do it? And you know, process is a lot of what matters in governmental affairs, and so it's taken a while to work through that. There's not been, I don't think, another project quite like this. So Mary gets it.
There is nothing usual about this project. We typically don't do 100% design plans in PD&E.
Right.
Currently, we don't even really have a scope. So we are working diligently, and the direction of the project changes almost daily. You know, I think what I can tell you from the department standpoint is everybody is very, very committed. We recognize the importance of this project. We certainly understand, you know, how strategic it is for everyone that's out in the NASA complex. And that's one of the things I can tell you, the Volcker team as well as the department representatives, we're committed to trying to deliver this schedule. It works with extreme communication. We have standard meetings, and we are all on target. And so our schedule right now, almost every single line item has 0% float, meaning that everything is a critical path item for us. So it is all hands on deck every single day with it. We're trying to actually come up with a construction estimate for the NASA folks to be able to look forward to maybe moving with some type of grant alternatives for the actual construction.
That's a point I wanted to
this
make.
project,
There is no funding yet for the construction phase.
So we're trying to get that number to them so we can start.
Has not said, well, we're going to pay for that too. So that still remains to be worked out. There are some federal highway grant programs, the infra grant, that this is an eligible project, and hopefully, given the importance of the space program to, you know, the entire nation, it will get some serious consideration.
All right, yeah. Mr. Holden? No, I wasn't sure whether...
Madam Chair, that's an interesting segue. You had mentioned grants, and obviously we just talked about Port Canaveral, our airport, and now our spaceport. We haven't really discussed this yet as a TPO, but as you're aware, the President was successful in getting his infrastructure bill passed, and Congress signed it into law. There's been some mixed reviews by local governments of how much of an impact it has, positive or negative. Based on a cursory review that I've made of that act, it primarily will support and benefit major regional projects, which would be projects like the Port Canaveral, the airport, spaceport, mainly federal projects, especially, is my understanding, it's about a 75-25 match, and what I mean by that is the local governments would be responsible for 75% of the cost, not 25. So like I said, there's some I think they're still trying, a lot of folks out there trying to understand and digest exactly what that new legislation and appropriations are by the President and by Congress, which you mentioned grants. It looks like there may, however, be some opportunities for these major regional economic development transportation projects to go after that federal money, and I'm not certain if the county, Brevard County, has someone on staff that specializes in grants. But at the TPO, it may be something, I know we do have some capable staff and they've done some, but it's something that I know we got staff report coming up after this agenda item, and I would be interested to know what our plans are with regard to going after a lot of these grants, especially considering the new act.
Okay.
Question, if I can,
Mr. Randalls.
Do we need to provide a motion of support for this PD&E? It's way above our level then. This is for information.
This is just an information.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And a kickoff and information.
This is
Yeah.
a federal process. There are requirements for public outreach that they have to be able to document.
Okay.
So this is one of them. We're on television, so people know about it. So
Okay,
this
thank
is
you.
going through the process.
And again, the key is to provide our information purposes, so if anybody does have questions after the meeting, feel free to reach out to either one of us.
We have another question,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
I don't have a
Osmer.
question, but I agree what Mary said is that the number is very important. As I work at both CAPE and KSC, I can tell you that when NASA or the Air Force goes to get money, they can't go with an open-ended.
Right.
I mean, so what they have to know is, what is that number? You have to have that number so they can go forth, whether it goes all the way to the Pentagon or to NASA DC, because you just can't say, I need money.
Yes.
They're going to say, well, how much? And you have to have that number. So she makes a very important point is, and why they're asking is, we need to know what that number is, because you can't get that type of funding. And a lot of times, a lot of that funding does come loose. Money doesn't get spent on other projects, turns up for somewhere else. But again, the question is,
How much?
what is that number? So, I mean, she makes a very good point, and I said, as I work out there and I do a lot of these type things. I understand what they're saying is, how much is how much? You have to have a number, something they can shoot for. So that is very critical.
For our schedule, we have an August 2018 deadline to provide a cost estimate for the construction phase. And keeping in mind, we have not really started, this is the start of the PD&E study right now. And, we do have quite a few of environmental layers that we will be working through and a lot of coordination with outside agencies before we can even get to the alignment in which type of bridge we would need that estimate for. So when I tell you we are all on steroids on this one, we truly are. So it's a little scary, but it'll be good. It's a good project.
No pressure.
No,
Yeah,
not at all.
that's right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. All right, 7D is staff report. Mr. Khan?
Well, I'll take Trey's comment first about particularly, I can't really speak for the county, what the county needs, but for the TPO, in terms of having additional staffing, I guess you're referring to have as their full-time job developing grant applications for a variety of things. My reaction to that is that we currently have on board 5 different consulting firms. And if we need to have some specialized application, if we need cost estimates for an application, we will call on them. And they can sign and seal with a PE behind their name, which an ordinary staff person will not be able to do. I think that was the most efficient way to do it. You can call on them when you need them, and only for the length of time that you need them. We have 5 different firms with different subspecialties that we can pick and choose, so I think we would be able to cover any kind of funding request opportunity that would come forward, and that we would not then have someone full-time staff withdrawing salary and benefits and all of that with maybe not as much work to do during the entire period. So I suspect that just off the top of my head, Trey, I think the situation that we have now will allow us to react to those situations that come up in the future. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is, of course, this is my last meeting. And I never thought I'd really get to this point. Some of you are retired, and I've never retired before, so I don't quite know what to expect. Why have I been here 30 years? I didn't think I would ever be in a job for 30 years because I get bored very easily. And the fact that I've been here 30 years indicates that something's been going on here that certainly kept my interest, kept my commitment, kept my passion, kept me emotionally engaged. And I didn't anticipate that at first, but it seems that it was the right choice that I made coming down here all those years ago. Part of it is because this is a very complex area for transportation. I mentioned the Quinimoto. I kind of pulled that out on purpose to kind of put that out in front of you, that the challenges here are really extraordinary, and so are the rewards. So we're dealing with commercial space flight. We're dealing with the second busiest cruise port in the world. These are not small things. And I've noticed Brevard sometimes has a small town attitude. It doesn't recognize its own importance. It doesn't take for granted the capabilities that it has. It's still small. So I've really been pleased with what's going on. There's a couple of things on the little poster back there that staff put together. There could be many, many more. I also want to, while thinking about this, I want to issue a caution. What's the disappointment I've had is the fact that we haven't had enough money. I'll be candid about that. Look, I'm a transportation planner. I'm an advocate for Brevard's transportation system, and we need more money to make it better. Now, I don't make that decision. You all do as elected officials. I can just make the point, make the case. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The gas taxes in Florida, in Brevard, have not been adjusted since 1992. We're dealing with the same rates at the state, federal, and at the county level that we've had for 25 years. Well, what have prices done? Well, we are not going to be able to keep up. Now, what that means we will do if there's no more revenue, we're going to have to adjust the program and downsize it. We already have in our project priorities, moving through the production pipeline, we have so many projects that we will not be able to afford to implement. There's not enough money to widen Babcock Street, to widen Malabar Road, to widen Ellis Road. I'm just picked on Palm Bay, Malabar Road, both sides of Malabar Road. There's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work, and there's not enough money. So when it comes time to selecting priorities in the future, I think you need to keep this in mind. We're pushing a lot of things through the process, but there's not going to be sufficient resources to take them the whole way through and actually build them. That's unfortunate, but I'm afraid that's what I see, that we're going to be having to scale back. But I don't mean to be leaving on a depressing note, but I have some very good friends in the room, John in the back. These are like my family, so I don't want to get maudlin here. I just want to say, well, thank you all for the opportunity you've given me. I hope that I've been able to give the residents of Brevard their money's worth and do some things creative, improve the profession as well as the mobility here locally. Because we do have some unique opportunities, and what we do here sets the stage for other places. We are leaders. We are leaders, and we need to recognize that and take pride in what we do, because we're doing good work. We are doing good work. Despite the shortage of resources, we're doing good work. So I'm very pleased with Georganna moving in to follow me, because I think we'll carry on doing the good work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kalm. I have a surprise. We did a resolution 18.19.
You did.
For.
Another surprise.
Here it is.
Oh, my.
Robert S. Kalm for serving the public with distinction for over 30 years.
Oh, boy.
Congratulations.
I don't have to sign it, do I?
No, here we go. Okay, here comes Abby.
Here comes Abby with the picture.
We needed to do a group.
Thank you.
So afterwards, what we'll do is a group picture.
Yes.
All right. And also, just to remind you, we're having a party, a retirement party, April 27th, 11 to 1. So please come. And the flyers are in the back of the room. So very good. Item 7E is public engagement report, and that will be Abby Hemingway, her new married name.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, board members. Before I jump into the report, I'm just going to draw your attention to the flyer that should have been at your seat about the Sarno Road corridor study. We are kicking off that public charrette schedule. It's actually over 4 days here in a couple weeks. For the folks at home, I don't have a slide for that, but if you visit spacecoasttpo.com, it's on our front page underneath trending plans. And so we'll be having a 4-day, basically, we'll be opening with an opening presentation on the 24th. And for the 25th and 26th, it'll be an open house work day where citizens can come in on their lunch break, or they can't attend an evening event. And then there'll be a closing presentation on the Thursday, the 26th. So it gives the citizens ample time to kind of go in and give their input, see what's going on with the study. So we're very excited about that. To jump into the report here, I'm going to be reporting back on February for our engagement and our outreach initiatives. And to kick it off, we're just going to talk about school-based public involvement. February is always a really busy month for us. We had 5 schools that participated in the bike safety program. And I just wanted to draw your attention to, I think sometimes people assume that the bike safety education program is kind of led by adults. They typically are for the most part, but the kids actually start to become involved. And as you can see in one of these pictures here up on the screen, they start to become part of the learning experience where they become engaged in hands-on activities and actually helping their peers learn the skills. So just wanted to draw attention to sometimes it's not always just the PE teacher and a sit and get kind of lesson plan or anything like that. It's hands-on, the kids are involved, and they get to work with their peers, which is just great to see. And then we also donated 32 helmets within that program, so just a kudos to Kim Smith, who basically runs our bike ped safety program in our schools. And then to talk about community-based involvement, we were extremely busy. Just a few things I'm going to call out on this list. It was School Crossing Guard Appreciation Day in February, and this was one that we really wanted to go and take the time to recognize those individuals who kind of have a thankless job. They keep our kids safe every day. The one here in the photo, her name's Angie, and we went out and talked with all the Rockledge crossing guards, which they work all of Fisk together. There's only 8 of them. And this one here, she's been a crossing guard for 28 years. She knows every kid's name by heart, buys them birthday and Christmas presents. And it's just amazing. We were just really excited to go out and celebrate them. We gave them little goodie bags with a feel-good message and candy, and they were really appreciative. So that was a feel-good moment for us that day. And then we've also been busy working with our law enforcement agencies on a few different events, but one that I wanted to call out specifically was Melbourne Police Department recently launched their Operation Busted campaign, and the TPO supported that campaign by providing materials for it. So they went out to car loops in the schools, and they were handing out brochures that the TPO provided to them. So that was a great partnership. We look forward to continuing working with them and also our other law enforcement agencies as well. We also went out and supported the Mayor's Fitness Challenge, which I know many of the cities here that are represented participated in that. We specifically went out and supported the City of Cape Canaveral, and Beachside held a joint one that we went out and participated in. And then, of course, to wrap up February was the grand opening of our rail trail. It was a huge event. We not only had a ribbon cutting, but we also had a community cycle fun day. And I have a little recap video from City of Titusville to show you what happened over those 2 days.
Wow, that's great.
Those things don't happen by themselves, and I want to give a shout out to the staff of the City of Titusville that pulled that together. It was an outstanding job.
Yeah, it was an amazing weekend. Our staff attended both of the events, and huge shout out to Titusville City, the Chamber as well, because without them that wouldn't have been possible. They did a fabulous job. So just moving on to some of our digital media analytics. At the TAC-CAC committee meeting, one of the members had pointed out that to maybe add some definitions, maybe for some new members who don't really know social media as well, or aren't keyed into certain platforms. So here I've just kind of given you a definition of the things that we capture and report back on every month, so that you can kind of understand where we're at and how we're trying to move forward in improving those numbers. And then February was a huge news month for us. A lot of that had to do with the opening of the trail. But also I wanted to give a shout out to the City of Palm Bay. They got recognized by Florida Today about some traffic improvements and what they're doing upgrade-wise to address safety, and they've really been on the ball about it, especially since last year with some of those school-age child deaths. So I just want to give a shout-out to City of Palm Bay, and I'm really glad that they got recognized for doing some good work. And then lastly, you can see for our deliverables, we put out 2 newsletters, 4 press releases or briefs, and then this report that I created today. And then just really briefly, I just wanted to touch on one new thing that we're trying to do at the TPO, public involvement-wise, for social media and anything that we're printing or putting out is creating our own graphics, because we really understand the need to make our own content. It's great to share and to partner, and we're all about that, but we need to make sure that we are also creating our own content and kind of being the champion, so to speak, of safety and making sure the message is accurate. So that's one new thing that we're doing, and we're excited to hopefully create more. It's a little time consuming, but it's worth it in the end to get the right message out there.
All right.
That's it.
All right, very good, Abby. Any questions for Abby? All right, yes, Mr. Holden.
It's just, thank you, Chair. It's kind of more of a comment or observation, and it kind of goes back to Mr. Com. I know Mr. Com has overseen a lot of major projects in this county over 30 years, the I-95 widening, the Brewer Bridge, Pineda extension, the Parkway, so many things. Those are big issues that a lot of people can see very easily, but what you don't know about Mr. Com is his affinity and his love for children. And you don't see that, you don't read about it, you don't know that part of Mr. Com. I do, and I can tell you when it comes to pedestrian safety, he's made it a priority in this county, and he's worked with staff, with Kim, and with us in the City of Palm Bay and so many. So I think as we recognize Mr. Com, we need to recognize not just the big things, but also for his heart.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. 7F, local government report, Mr. Com.
I don't think we have anything, do we? Yeah.
All right, seeing none. 7G is the multimodal agencies report. Mr. Bastille.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think you got a pretty great overview of what's going on multimodal-wise between the port and the Orlando-Melbourne International Airport today. And I want to thank Mr. Crow and Mr. Graham and Mr. Arnold for giving us those great presentations. And I do want to add a couple things as far as the airport goes. They're hosting a big corporate 5K, and you actually get to run the 5K on the runway. I think that's pretty cool. I don't like running at all, and it's enough to make me want to go run out there.
But you can walk. I mean, you don't have to run.
And they're also going to be lighting their brand new control tower for the first time as part of that. So it should be a fantastic event, and it's a fundraiser for United Way. And I also learned at the last Orlando-Melbourne International Airport board meeting that there's a very unique partnership between one of their tenants, Embraer, and Port Canaveral. Embraer is a manufacturer of jets, and they're going to be bringing in some larger cargo, larger components of their airplanes in through Port Canaveral and transporting them to the airport to be assembled. And it's just another good example of a great strategic partnership between two of world-class facilities in our county. And also, moving on to space, the Space Florida board met back in March, and they approved their spaceport systems plan, which is kind of their version of a master plan update for them. And they go into a lot about the future of space and how there can be up to, or can expect up to 1,000 satellite launches a year, 100+ rocket launches a year, and how we need to all be prepared for that. And so all of these master plans couldn't have been developed at a better time, because we're getting ready to embark on the update of our 2045 long-range transportation plan. And so we'll get to look at all of these plans and feed them into our plan in order to figure out how we can safely and efficiently move people and goods to all of these facilities. And we will be reaching out to all of your cities and your staff as well as part of that plan development to make sure we don't miss anything. Just something to be aware of as we move forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bastille? Nope. All right. Thank you. 7H is the Regional Coordination Report. Mr. Com? All right. 7I, the Florida Department of Transportation report. Jana Taylor, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jana Taylor, your Florida Department of Transportation liaison. Just one thing at your place, besides the monthly construction report, is a notice of a public meeting.
Okay.
That is on May the 1st. It is the State Road 405 Strategic Intermodal System, the SIS Connector Intersection Improvements projects. There's multiple projects listed there. And that's all I have today. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, any questions? All right, seeing none, very good, thank you. Okay, next meeting will be May 10th, 2018. It's hard to believe. And, whoa, who is this guy?
Where'd you get that?
I don't recognize him.
My ex,
Wow,
Becky
Bob.
was, this is Lisa's doing.
Job did to you?
Yes, this is what happens. All right, this is great.
Calling me out, Bob.
That is too cool. This is too cool.
That
All
was, I
right.
just graduated from college. That was 1976.
I like, what's this, the handlebars?
I've had a mustache since 2 days after I graduated.
All right, sorry. All right. Well, thank you and congratulations.
Oh, my.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? All right, seeing none, the meeting will adjourn at 4:44.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.